Welcome to the People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke. This evening we're going to be talking drought, the water prohibition and conservation. And to help me discuss this topic, I have members of the Barbados Meteorological Service as well as members of the Barbados Water Authority. We have Semelka Jackman, a senior meteorologist, Ifill, the Manager of Water Resources and Environmental Management Unit at the BWA, and Yvette Harris-Griffith, the Marketing Officer. Good evening and welcome to all of you. This is the People's Business, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. And we're back. Let's get straight to it. The water prohibition that is upon us now. Maybe Mr. Ifill, you can tell us what are some of the businesses that would be exempt from this prohibition and why?
I'm going to shift and tell you that Yvette will speak to that also. However, basically, we are trying to avoid, in general terms, the excessive use of potable water for non-essential services. So you will have, in the first instance, non-essential things like washing down driveways, the washing of buildings, but it is basically the use for non-essential, using potable water for non-essential purposes. It must be made clear that there is no restriction on the water that you have used, like you have stored from the catchment for your rainwater catchment, all those tanks you have that have water in, right? Those types of water, the prohibition does not impact those. It impacts potable water supply. And I will let Yvette explain the prohibitions.
Okay.
Wendy and viewers, the prohibition notice which the Water Authority would have started on Monday, April 24th, actually places certain restrictive measures on customers. Whether they're domestic customers or commercial customers, what we are seeking to have everyone join us in doing is curbing their excessive use of potable water. So if you use water for irrigation, for watering gardens, lawns, grounds, filling of any tanks or ponds, baths or swimming pools, at this time we're asking you to cut back on that, not to use potable water to do these things. Alex would have mentioned a few of washing roadways and pavements, garages and so on. We are asking you to either use recycled water, water you may have already caught, or be restrictive in your use. Now that means that we are breaking it down for the various entities that do use water. Wendy, you asked about entities that may be exempt. It is not a matter of being exempt because we are not in a crisis situation as yet. What we are trying to do is avoid getting there. So there are going to be certain sectors that are heavy water users, such as the agricultural sector, and perhaps even commercial valet services, etc. What we are doing is placing restrictions on those, yes, but saying to them, you can do what you need to do on a daily basis. There are just certain parameters that you need to use when ensuring that you're using water within your sector. For domestic customers, we ask you to be mindful. Do not use water excessively. So remember the conservation measures that we always try to drum home to everyone. Try to restrict letting water run when you're brushing your teeth, when you're washing dishes, when you're preparing your meals and peeling vegetables, etc. Try to use a basin. Try to make sure that you catch the water in a cup as you brush your teeth. Turn off the shower when you're soaping or lathering in a bath. Those are the types of things we're reinforcing at this time and asking everyone to be very mindful in their potable water use.
Okay, if I can go to Miss Jackman here, because you said we're not in a crisis, but we are in a serious drought. Tell me why we're facing the weather conditions that we're currently facing, Miss Jackman.
Well, currently the rainfall totals for the year have been below average. So we know it's the dry season already, where we expect that we wouldn't get a lot of rainfall in Barbados. But on top of that, we're seeing less rainfall than we normally get climatologically. So for the last few months, we've gotten less rainfall than expected, and that's why we've moved into this drought conditions. And we are forecasting this to continue into the next few months. So we expect below average rainfall into June.
Okay, so we're going as far as June. And how far is the prohibition set for? Yvette,
Wendy, the prohibition notice started on April 24th. Have it slated to end on June 30th this year. Of course, that is subject to a review of the weather conditions and the weather patterns and what may be happening on island at that point in time.
Okay, Mr. Ifill, I'm not sure if you can tell me exactly how monitoring and so on will be done to ensure that no one actually breaks with this prohibition.
This monitoring will be a national effort. It falls on me and it falls on you, the public, to help us conserve our water resources. The whole island can fully remember the 2018-2019 drought and the impacts it had across Barbados, particularly in those higher areas and in the north of the island. We've heard the cries of our neighbors. We've seen the stress. We've seen the brigades looking to help with trucking water back and forth. So in this first, there are penalties. Remember, starting from $500 and time in prison going up. But at this time, we don't need this. We don't want to have to stress the penalties. What we would like to stress is a national responsibility. Be your neighbor's keeper by conserving. Be your neighbor's guardian by a gentle reminder from you to your neighbor when you see them disregarding these water conditions. Because we know what we can, it is too clear, and 2018-2019 is too short a time ago for us not to remember the stress that it had caused across the island. So there are penalties. We are watching, our staff will be watching, and we hope that you, the public, will be watching, because in the end, the burden, the stress, and the pain of restrictions that might have to be put in place because of improper use, that stress falls on you, the public. So we therefore beg kindly your help in policing this system for us and helping us manage this system.
Okay, now you mentioned the issue of the water warriors a few years back and how they helped out, but the economic situation has changed somewhat, and if we all look at the shelf, the price of water has gone up just as a few other food items. So can we really expect, should it worsen, that we might be able to see people coming out in the magnitude that they did back in 2019?
That is why we are asking for your help. And that's constant reminding the public. But, we usually get the question, why are you doing this now? Why didn't you do it before? What caused you to do it? You would have heard the Met services say up to June. Then you would have heard that our prohibition notice extends to June, and you would have heard Yvette say it can extend beyond June depending on whether the dry conditions persist. Now, yes, water is expensive to buy in bottles, so therefore, this is why we're asking your assistance in using the finite drinking water resources we have in a responsible manner. Those simple things such as in your toilet cistern, just taking a 250 milliliter bottle, fill it with water, put it in your cistern. If you don't have one of the expensive low flush toilets, each time you flush, you save 250 milliliters of water, a quarter of a liter. So therefore, things like that will help.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have to have the work wires.
Okay. Ms. Harris-Griffith, any other conservation tips for the general public outside of the toilet bowl? Like, say, for example, the individuals who run the commercial valet services, should they be altering and using some differences with different hoses, what have you? Is there anything they can do?
What we say to them, because there are a number of guidelines that go along with this prohibition notice, Wendy, which we have placed on our website and on our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, that they can refer to. And those break down the various pieces of advice that we will give to persons in the different sectors that depend heavily on water. The commercial valet services are one of those. So it is not that they cannot use water. It is that as they're using the portable water, we ask that they do it using garden hoses or pressure washers that are rated at less than 3 gallons per minute and are fitted with an automatic shut-off device. If you're using a hose and you have an automatic shut-off device on the end of it, then when you are not actually applying pressure on that device to have the water run, then the water is not wasting. So there's certain parameters, certain pieces of information that we would have available to them in our guidelines. And as I said, those are accessible via the BWA website. They're also accessible via our social media pages. But we will continue to inform through as many media as possible to educate the various entities and persons, domestic related customers alike, in terms of what they can do. It is not that you cannot work if you're in these sectors, is that you would have to put certain things in place to do so.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because, a lot of people read, but they still see what they want to see. So are they really embracing the message that the BWA and the government of Barbados is sending at this point in time? Because we already know how water scarce Barbados is, but are people really embracing the message, or are your hotlines inundated with calls for clarifications?
Well, there are persons calling for clarifications, and we try to assist in that regard. Now, we would have only had the prohibition notice placed for the 6-7 days or so, and therefore it is new. Persons, we have short memories. So even though, as Alex said, 2018, 2019 was not that long ago, if you have not made certain conservative measures when it comes to water use a part of your normal everyday activity, then you may have forgotten. We will give you reminders. We are a people who very closely stick to our phones, and we're very much tied to social media. So the Water Authority is doing its bit. We're trying to reach out to the different sectors. We're pulling each of the guidelines out one by one and explaining them, and you will see those appearing on social media on a daily basis. We are blending that with water conservation messages, general water conservation messages, to remind persons of the little things, as Alex said, that you can do. Just the placement of a quarter liter bottle into your cistern, your tank of the toilet, can help to displace the amount of water in there, and every time you flush, you're actually using less. Another simple method would be to obtain a plastic cup, and when you are brushing your teeth, that you just put the water in the cup, and that is what you use from the time you start to brush your teeth up until you are finished and you rinse the toothbrush. That is not difficult to do. It is not hard to obtain such a cup. It's just a matter of remembering to do it and following through. When you're taking a shower, most people turn on the water, and because they want it at a particular temperature, when they step under the shower, they will just let that cold water run. It is just going down the drain if you do that. What you can do is just get a small bucket and place it in your shower, so that if you capture that water as you get to the temperature you want, that water can then be used to water your plants. If you're someone that has plants within the home or just around the house, you can use that water, so you're not actually wasting it. There's
Okay.
small things that we can all do to help in this initiative.
Okay, when we come back, I want to speak to Mr. Ifill as to whether or not we're going to be boosting our salt water ionics process to help with this drought situation. People's Business will be back in a bit. To the discussion to talk about the drought, the prohibition which is upon us. 228-5562, 228-5563 are our call numbers. And there's already someone there, so I'll get back to you shortly, Mr. Ifill. Good evening.
Good evening.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. Good evening.
Go right ahead with your question, sir.
Okay. I know that I am in full support of the prohibition restrictions and so on in relation to the uses of our water for conservation purposes. My question, and yes, and we know that individuals as well as businesses can be prosecuted if they violate that law. Now, my question to you and the panel, who in the past and also in the present, we've been hearing of so many pipes that are being burst, and you call the water authorities, and for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, nobody turns up, and tons and gallons of water is being wasted. Who from the Water Authority will be prosecuted for such actions? I will listen for your answers.
Mr. Ifill, I think you should take this.
You know, yes, I know this is a concern of the public, but one thing we must understand is that we have a very aged network, and basically we have about. Let me first make this distinction. Anything, the pipes that run to the houses, generally, those are pipes. When those are burst, we call those burst pipes. Our bigger mains, burst mains. We have in the range about 1,200 burst pipes per month, right? In addition to that, we can have up to between, about 30 to 40 burst mains per month. Now, what we have to do is a triage system, like the hospital. The bigger vessel that bursts, many times we have to address that bigger vessel first. And if that bigger vessel is running, it might mean sometimes the postponement of fixes on our smaller mains. And to the public, it might seem quite harsh, but if a half-inch service running across the road in a public area is burst for say a week, and you know many times we hear that, but if I hear a burst main in, let me say, Grandview or Gall Hill, and that is how it's reported. No pole number, anything like that. It might be 2 or 3 bursts in Gall Hill, because remember I'm talking about 40 or 50 burst mains coming in when the day comes. So we're going to fix one. So as far as we are concerned, we have fixed the burst pipe, which the person called a burst main in Gall Hill. Our burst mains don't usually last more than 24 hours. So as far as we're concerned, that burst main, which is a burst pipe in Gall Hill, has been fixed. But the person looking out through the window saying, wait, you feel like them people point the radio saying the burst main fixed and the burst main outside my house running? Now, we are about to address that in an app that we have developed, that one of our technicians has developed, that we are asking, again, the public's help in that when you see a burst, whether it be a burst main or a burst pipe, that you can take the location of that burst and send it to us. So when the address say Gall Hill, when the average person in the public say Gall Hill, we know exactly within about 5 to 10 meters which part of Gall Hill that burst is. That will significantly reduce our response time to the burst services. Right? Now, the other thing we are doing, we are actually, during the drought, we are increasing our team that will be responding to burst mains and burst services. As I said, generally we have the burst mains in hand, because the burst mains are such a significant issue that it is usually one report at the exact area by the burst main there, by the brown cow, by the mahogany tree, that right by the corner going up the hill. We usually, for burst mains, because they are so big, we get that direct information. But if you when we publish the app and you got it, still use it to also report burst mains. So you will see an increased response from the Barbados Water Authority in response to the burst mains and services. But we definitely have to triage, because the age of the network, and many times we have numerous bursts in one locality, and we go and fix that so it's reported as a burst in Gall Hill, but we only fix one in one part of Gall Hill. So we have put a system in place to clear out that miscommunication.
Okay.
Wendy,
Okay.
if I may
Well,
add to what
that's,
Alex is
we
saying,
have
if you
someone
don't mind.
online, I believe,
Okay.
asking about the fixing of mains and so on after an area of road has been fixed.
The restoration.
Yeah, the restoration.
Okay. All right. If I may just add to what Alex was saying and also segue into answer. Burst mains is one thing. Now, the average person may not get the distinction or understand the difference between a burst main and a burst service. But generally speaking, on average, the Barbados Water Authority receives or has just around 1,300 burst pipes a month that we address. This is nothing to do with the burst mains that Alex was speaking to. So when you look at the numbers and you also add to it what Alex is saying is in some instances we have some difficulty in finding the services, the burst services, the pipes, does slow down our response time. We know that we can do better and we are working towards increasing the number of burst pipes that we can repair within a shorter time frame. What certainly would help us, as Alex spoke to, is our BWA reporting app, which allows persons to download that app and then just send the message to the authority. That comes with a locator pin and helps us then, our personnel, to be able to find that particular burst service, whether a pipe or a main, a lot faster. Now, we are going to be stepping up our routes to the bursts that are in, but it helps us to not have duplicated reports because there is some difficulty sometimes in how I give directions and how you may give directions. So when we have 2 or 3 reports in our system that we respond to, it is only after the fact that we then determine, oh, you know what, this is one report. So using the BWA reporting app, which we have already launched, and which you can, whether you have an Android phone or an iPhone, you can download from the App Store and help us to have better directions to locate the bursts and hence to speed up our repair of them. So we're trying to use technology to help us to narrow the gap between when the report is made and when the repair is completed.
Okay.
Now, someone is speaking about the restoration aspect. Once the repair is done, there's some aspect of simple restoration that the authority does. But the Barbados Water Authority is in the business of water and repairing the mains that would transport the water. We are not the experts on road repair. So that then pushes us to do our initial restoration and pass that on generally to the Ministry of Transport and Water Resources, of which we are a part, and try to get the restoration addressed. But I will say to you, the pace at which we do repairs, whether for pipes or mains, a lot of the time outstrips the capability of our parent ministry to keep pace with us to address all the restorations. So there is sometimes a time lag, but we try to do, we are trying to do better in that regard and making sure that information is passed on. If it is a major carriageway or road, we try to get that addressed as quickly as possible. The ones that tend to drop a little way down the line in terms of time-wise are smaller roads or maybe driveway reinstatements and so on. And we are also working feverishly with various entities and in discussion to try to, again, do better there and narrow the gap in terms of that timeline. But
we have a caller on the line, so if we can just let them in quickly. Good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, go right ahead.
Listen, I listened here quite eloquently hearing the speeches, quite eloquent speeches like talking to from the water people, and I want to say that I would like to see also plenty put on the water authority. I can tell you why. I'm not buying a lot of things that I hear say tonight by Mr. Alex and the Water Authority people. And let me just tell you something. I know there are plenty of burst pipes in this country. That there are. And how you could tell me that you have people trained that can't find these places? When somebody phone y'all, they give you a direction. How many can't find places? That other people have business to find places. Okay? Don't tell me that. The mother what? But you see birth for 3 or 6 or 5 hours and nobody come. Not birth mains only, not birth mains, other pipes. Why you tell me that there's competency in that day? And I don't understand what Mr. Alex is telling. He trying to brainwash me. But these birth mains, these thousands of birth mains you have in Barbados, all television, man. But I believe it's not efficiency that this Water Authority is going about.
Okay. I think he's trying to say that he believes that the numbers that you have given us, that they're significantly higher because given reporting he would have done himself.
Well, we know, well, I don't know what his source of information or data is, but I know that we also count those burst pipes. We also count the burst mains, and many times when we have duplicates, the numbers come in and we sift them through, and we are between 12 to 1300 burst pipes per month, plus then the burst mains. And I know it may seem hard to persons, but a burst main on average in Barbados does not last more than 24 hours, right?
Okay.
Because we must distinguish between a burst pipe and a burst main. Yes, we've admitted that we are trying to find solutions to speed up our response to the burst pipes, but we respond adequately to the quite quick to the burst mains.
Okay, we are going to take a break here, and when we come back, I want to speak with Ms. Jackman about those numbers that we've been seeing. And we're back. We're talking drought, the water prohibition and conservation. Now, Ms. Jackman, you said that the rates of water, that rainfall that's being recorded, are much lower than what was originally expected. Can you give us some kind of numbers or percentile in comparison to last year and the previous year, maybe?
Okay, so what we normally do is we compare the rainfall against a climatological average. So that's like the average 30-year rainfall. That would give a good gauge because, as you can imagine, some years it would be higher rainfall amounts, and other years it would be smaller rainfall amounts. But the average would give a general gauge of what is expected across Barbados. So what we saw, so say for example, this month. So the rainfall totals for April was really low. Up to the 22nd this month, we had just 5.6 millimeters at our station in Charnox, and that is significantly low. It's almost the end of the month, and rainfall less than 10 millimeters. We did have the few wet days, which everyone remembers last week, and that kind of brought up the total a little bit. So we had over about 30 millimeters in those few days in Christchurch, and that would have brought the total to 41.6 millimeters for April so far. But the average rainfall for April is normally 58.1 millimeters. So you can see, even though we had all of that rainfall over extended a few days, I should say, that still didn't take us over what we normally expect. And that was the trend continuously. As we've been mentioning at the Met Office, yes, we will get wet days. We will get wet days. We should still expect to see wet days. We should still expect to see some wet periods, but it is not those periods are not expected to bring significant rainfall to take us above what we normally expect, which would help with the drought conditions that we are currently having.
And you know, we have a caller on the line we're going to go to, but I want to look at the fact that there has been flooding in some districts despite, you know, the rainfall not being where it needs to be, and to find out from Mr. Ifill if some of that water managed to get into our aquifers and help our well situation any. But let's go to the caller first. Good evening to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Go right ahead with your question or query.
Okay, this is a little tip I have for you. For a good 2 years now, I've been flushing my toilet with a 5-gallon bucket, because, you know, my tank holds 5 gallons of water. So I got this bucket, and I use half of the water in the 5-gallon bucket to flush the toilet with. That can help conserve some of the water wastage. And I would like to see you all put taps in schools and government building also, because especially in school, the children always leave the taps running, and it will help conserve the water if you all put stop cocks on it. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, she's advocating some conservancy measures. Yes, go right ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
In relation to that, the lady is correct. The caller is correct. There are pertinences and devices that you can use at home to help with your water saving. But the conservation effort, as I said, is a mindset. It's about education, and it's about following through. And the Water Authority has been and will continue to, and we have stepped up our educational thrust in the various schools, primary and secondary, tertiary, etc., to allow the students of Barbados, the student population of Barbados, to help guide the adults. Because, you know, they always say, and a child shall lead us. But the reality is, if they understand the importance of conserving water in their everyday activities, then it helps us to make an overall difference. So the Water Authority is doing that, and we will continue to do that. But by the same token, we ask persons if there are small tips that you are aware of that you can use and you can share with your family and friends of ways that they can conserve water at home, then please do so.
All right, we have another caller. Good evening to you, and go right ahead with your question. Okay, the caller has dropped out. Now, back to you, Miss Jackman. We had some flooding in the north and upwards to Whole Town. What then, and you did send out your flood warnings. So when people hear flood and then think of drought, you know, they anticipate that basically the numbers are going to be where they need to be.
Right. So that's not necessarily always the case. So when we think drought, we think you have to think drought on a seasonal level. So you're not just thinking about rainfall for one day, but you are now thinking about rainfall for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months. We weren't speaking about drought at the beginning of the year. We were speaking about the possibility of drought at the beginning of the year, when we started to see what the trend was and what the forecast was trending towards. But after we start to see it develop, then we would say, well, okay, now these are drought conditions, because we see that general trend towards below normal rainfall, and that's what we're forecasting for a period of time. When you think about rain for 1 day or 2 days, that's short-term forecasting. So you can have rain events in a drought, With a drought, you're looking at when you have less than what you normally expected. You can have a drought in the wet season as well. We can still have tropical waves, which can still bring flooding, which can still bring some rainfall, but it wouldn't be the numbers that you would normally get. And that's when it goes to a drought. And that is the difference. So we're not saying there will never be any rain up to June. That is not correct. We will see some rainy periods, but we will also see less rain periods, and we would see less total rainfall numbers each month.
Okay, now coming with this drought is an intensity in terms of the heat. So I might step out and it's raining, but by the time it's finished, that water is off of the surface. Alex, Mr. Ifill, is this helping you all any in terms of being able to collect that groundwater?
All rainfall, all rain events help us in one way or the other. When the rain is falling, do you wash your car? No. Do people wet their gardens? No. And all these things then is a reduction on the demand on our potable water resources. About 20% of that water under normal conditions will reach our groundwater reserves under normal conditions. But as the Met Services just told you, drought is a slow onset, long phase climatological event. Floods are short, hit the ground, impact the ground, and some will run off. And people always say, but why does water's run off? But yes, we do benefit from the rainfall. And you had flooding. You had significant flooding in, say, St. Andrew. I think it was the Sunday. In some parts of St. Andrew had flooding. It didn't impact the north that day. We have no sources in St. Andrew. However, St. Andrew depend on other sources, and therefore the incidental uses of water for washing cars, gardening, because there's a lot of gardening activity in some parts of St. Andrew and those areas, that demand would have reduced, and therefore, since they have it from the sky, they didn't have to tap into our resources to do it. So okay. Yes, we benefit in more ways than one.
All right. There was a question I had on the whole ionic situation, which we didn't get to cover. But are you stepping up production of that water?
Basically, ionics is almost at its max. We still have a little piece left back, but we will then go to that as required if the drought conditions are extended.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we are upgrading the desalination plants in the north of the island.
Okay, we have a caller. Good evening to you. Go right ahead.
Hi, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Go right ahead.
Yes, good evening.
Sir, we're hearing you. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that I support the efforts to educate and encourage Barbadians not to waste water, whether there's a drought or not. But there was a recent United Nations report which stated that notwithstanding the effects and impacts of climate change and global warming and so on, that the most significant cause of water shortages actually was the excessive levels of water consumed by rich and wealthy people with their swimming pools and their large gardens and golf courses and so on, right? The report suggested that wealthy persons consume 20 to 50 times as much water as the average citizen. And though these people may not actually be dependent on the water supply authority with their private wells and so on, obviously there's still impact on the water levels in the aquifers. What I want to know is if there are any special strategies to restrict the levels of water. Some persons say the unconscionable levels of water consumed by rich and wealthy persons. Thank you.
Okay, will Yvette take this or Mr. Ifill?
At this time, I can segue to Alex if it's not a problem. But at this time, one of the water restrictions within the prohibition notice and listed in the guidelines is not using water from the BWA supply to fill private domestic swimming pools, spas, other recreational water appurtenances. So it is covered within the restrictive guidelines under this prohibition notice at this point in time. It's one of the measures that we ask persons to put in place to help with the excessive use and the excessive pull on our potable water resource.
Okay.
And,
Yes, go ahead.
and to interject here, and when it comes to so those supplies independent from the Barbados potable water supply, say water supply for golf courses, wells. Wells in Barbados are licensed by the Barbados Water Authority. Under the same Water Authority Act, when there is a force majeure, when nature signals to you that this is a problem, the Water Authority, through that act, has the right to restrict the use of those wells, the pumping of water from those wells. And we monitor those wells, the pumping and the water levels on a weekly basis. So in case that my office services come and say, well, look, hey, the El Nino is going further and we might be in worse situation, we have the right and law to restrict water uses for those purposes. And we monitor it closely so that we will know when that time comes for us.
Okay, we have to take a commercial break here, and when we return, we'll look to do our parting shots as the program nears a close. Good evening to you. There's a caller on the line. Go right ahead with your question.
A pleasant good night to everyone. I want to take this time to congratulate the members from the Barbados Water Authority for coming and actually sharing the information with us on the Met Office. But I have two concerns. I wonder if they have a plan in place that they can facilitate persons who want to use the gray water from the washing machines. If they have a plan that they can assist those persons with all the plumbing fittings and encourage us to use that water, because I would like to use that water. And the next one is when I see a burst main, it pains me to see that, like further down the road, I was told that those persons have to release another outlet so that the guys can work. Where is the plan in place to recapture that water? It is time that they have a plan in place. I was told that's the process, but that is old school. We're in the 21st century, and it's about time that whenever they are fixing the main, they capture all that water that's running down the road. Thank you very much.
Okay. So there are two questions with us. The grey water use, how can you better assist homeowners to capture it and use it during this prohibition? And also being able to capture some of that water that might come off of the various bursts that are reported.
Not to talk out of school, so I can only give advance. In relation to the grey water use, there is presently a bill being prepared to go through Parliament, the water reuse bill, that will capture all those opportunities for the average homeowner to reuse grey water, to use reclaimed black water for agricultural purposes and other industrial waters to be used for agricultural purposes, to use rainwater in the homes. But that bill is, I think, is presently being looked at by the Chief Parliamentary Council, and once it has gone through those stages, there will be the community communications session where we will alert the community on the rules and the opportunities within that bill.
Okay.
In relation to the other section, now, because it's running on the road, it's dirty and so forth, the times you see that is when, say, for example, there is a main burst at the bottom of a hill. Now, the weight of the water in that pipe, the pressure is so high that it precludes the guys from actually fixing the break. If there is a valve close enough to stop that pressure, they will close that valve. But normally, to actually work on the pressure, you need to release that. Then it is in the gutter, it's muddy, and so forth, and it is not, to actually pump it out and to make use of it is then to find uses for that dirty water to give some person without coming afoul of any laws. It is a good idea to look at, but we have not reached there yet. Yes, it is a new time, but we are looking at all these situations on how to handle such things. But as present, it is just a situation to make it possible to work, because water is a very strong force. So you must release the pressure for the guys working.
Okay, Ms. Jackman, before we get ready to go, I want to for you to map out for me. We said we're going down to June. May starts tomorrow. So what are the forecasts for the month of May and then for the month of June? Will one month be better than or worse than the other?
Right. So currently we are expecting below normal rainfall for both May and June. So we expect similar conditions to what we would have gotten in April. But lucky for us, May and June tend to have a little more rainfall than April and March. So we are moving into that period where even though it will be below average, we would still get a few more showers. We do seasonal forecast with monthly updates. So we are going to do an update again to the public in the middle of May. We have a good working relationship with Water Authority as they can understand why it's so critical to know the forecast and what's currently happening on the ground as it relates to rainfall and going forward. So we would continue to update them so that they would know what actions are needed and they can make the relevant plans for Barbados as it relates to the water issue that we are currently having.
Okay, if I can go now to Ms. Harris-Griffith, one tip on the prohibition that you really want the public to listen to, and one on conservation.
What I would say is on the prohibition, just be mindful. The prohibition speaks to a reduction or a restriction on excessive water use. So whatever your business, or if you're an individual homeowner, just curb or try to work on curbing your excessive water use at this point in time.
Okay.
A conservation message would be the same. Try to use only the water you really do need to use. And any methods or any uses of water that within your home or within your business that you know you are actually wasting some or not being mindful then try to reduce or curb those as well.
Okay, and one takeaway from you, Mr. Ifill?
The dry season is upon us. We cannot tell you that tomorrow the rain might not fall, but please be mindful. Be your neighbor's keeper. Be the nation's friend. Conserve water as much as possible. Please, we don't want another 2018, 2019. I've had enough licks and over that period. So we will do our best to hold your hands, and we ask you to report any bursts you see to us. You might not be comfortable with our response times, but we are trying to improve our response times. And we need your information to help us do that. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank
Wendy?
Yes, go ahead.
Before you thank, if I may take the opportunity, Alex asked to report, just to remind customers, our number 434-4292. They can use that number to make their reports, to ask their questions or queries in general or pertaining to the prohibition guidelines. 434-4292.
Okay, thank you so very much. Again, we want to thank our guests. We were talking drought, the water prohibition and conservation. Also want to thank you callers for some of the suggestions you've made in the area of conservation. We're happy that you've joined us here on The People's Business. Semelka Jackman at the Met Office, please continue to update us on this drought situation because it's getting really hot and we really need that rain. So I want to thank my guests once again. This has been The People's Business. I'm Wendy Burke. Do enjoy the remainder of your Sunday evening.